My name is Louis Almeida. I'm the leader, teacher, coach, and mentor of the ideas of Spinoza and Gurdjieff. Today's topic is going to be about Eckhart Tolle. I've learned a lot from Eckhart, and I think he's doing a wonderful job. His first book was The Power of Now. What a book. I enjoyed it. The idea of living in the present, living in the now, what a profound idea. It's rather magical. How did Eckhart Tolle get to that state? In his book, he expressed what he went through. He said he had voices in his head about suicide, and he began to question his thoughts. In the process of questioning and examining his thoughts, new thoughts came to him, and he began to ask the questions. Why was he thinking such thoughts? What was the cause of them? Is it possible to come to new thoughts? I must confess, it's been a while since I've read the book, but there's much more information. But the question I have is, how can we learn from Eckhart Tolle and be in that state of being in the now? He has many books now, and he also conducts seminars, and many attend, and they could be very costly. I found through Spinoza and Gurdjieff that to really acquire or come to new states of being, a state of being, and what is that state of being? And this is where Gurdjieff is so explicit in his book that Ouspensky wrote called In Search of the Miraculous. In the book, on page 65, it starts with, there's a difference between knowledge and being. What does that mean? He also says that knowledge, individual can acquire great knowledge. You can become a professor, a dentist, a doctor, a lawyer, a scientist, a physicist. You can win the Nobel Peace Prize, just as Einstein did. You can become an Einstein. Yet, even though we have great knowledge, our being has not changed. Why? An individual can have great knowledge, and Western culture really promotes or honors those who have great knowledge. Individuals who are on .com create new apps, how to operate cell phones or computers. Even when we speak of Steve Jobs or Bill Gates, how they started, and yet the individual's personality and ego has not changed. Knowledge does not affect ego. We just accumulate information on top of our ego state, and we use it as a way to express our ego and personality. Look at me, how great I am. I might be highly successful monetarily, financially, and yet I have a dark side. I may be an abuser. I may be narcissistic. I might have social problems, not knowing how to connect with others. I may be critical. I might have a drug problem, an alcoholic problem. So the individual with great knowledge does not look at the nature of his being. And this is what Gurdjieff and Spinoza has given me. The power and the ability to look at oneself. Myself, specifically. Gurdjieff says something very important. That an individual cannot, this is part 2, continuation. An individual cannot change anything. just by reading or attending a seminar. Why is that? I've learned that we must examine our nature. Socrates talked about the idea of self-examination. It's the most difficult process. However, it's the highest level of knowledge. To examine one's nature, what do we examine? Our thoughts, our attitudes, our habits, our thinking. How clear am I? Do I understand? Spinoza has given me the tools to understand, how to improve my understanding. So here we are talking about two individuals, Gurdjieff and Spinoza. Gurdjieff to me is more of an introduction. It helps us understand that individuals have a problem. On page 66 in the book called In Search of the Miraculous, Gurdjieff talks about that man is asleep. What is he talking about? And the idea that man can't awaken. What does that mean, to awake? When we talk about man, we talk about mankind in general, including women, male and female. The idea that to awake means to awaken the intelligence. A sleep state, it means that the intelligence is asleep. Gurdjieff, or Spinoza, talks about or explains in his ethics. The ethics includes the improvement of our understanding and correspondence. There are 5 parts to the ethics. Part 1 is about God, part 2 is about the mind, and part 3 is about the emotions. Part 4 is human bondage, and part 5 is human freedom. To know our emotions, how they manifest, expresses our nature. What do you mean by that? I'll give you an example. As I was standing in front of the elevator going to the 10th floor, I had a cart of groceries, and the elevator was full. But there was a little space that I could have squeezed in. But when the individual says, "We're full, you can't come aboard. Sorry, goodbye," and they left, I felt myself in an emotion. What is that emotion? It's emotion. The definition is a feeling or a decrease of power, or as Spinoza writes, a decrease of perfection. Perfection in Spinoza's language means reality. And at that moment, I was living in less reality, less power. An emotion, which is a pain, means that we have less power. Here we go. An emotion means a modification. A modification means a change in the body. What is that change? The body can be increased, including the mind. The mind and the body can be increased in its power or perfection, or it can be decreased in its power and perfection. Meaning that when I'm in a painful state, when you are in a painful state, when someone rejects you or you feel blamed or shame, you're going to feel a decrease of power, a decrease of ability to perform your action. We all begin with desire. Again, the definition of desire is the essence of man. What does that mean? We all are governed by desire. We want this, we want that, and in this instance, I wanted to go to the 10th floor. And at that moment, I couldn't. And I felt pain about that. Not only that, I have a desire to people to like me. I want their approval. And I felt rejection. So when we feel rejection, we feel a lack of power. We feel depleted. But we don't stop there. Pain goes into hate, and hate goes into anger. Some individuals really explode if they are emotional individuals. Gurdjieff talks about there are three states in the individual. There's the intellectual, or he calls it centers. There's the intellectual center, there is the emotional center, and there is the physical center. I am highly emotional, but this work with Spinoza and Gurdjieff, and through the help with my teacher, and I was with my teacher for over 20 years, that I learned that I express myself emotionally and physically. So I'm quick to anger when I'm feeling rejected. An individual who lives by his intellectual center is not really in touch with their emotions. They're more in touch with their intellect. So they might not feel their emotional states, but if they do feel it, they're able to say, put it in a compartment in their mind and leave it there and not touch it. Individuals who are highly intellectual do not like emotions. It's too threatening. That's why confrontation is very difficult for those who are intellectual. An emotional individual loves confrontation. They love to express themselves. They might be too talkative. They might be gregarious, very affable, loving, and expressing. They love to touch. I was one of those individuals. But in this work, the study of Gurdjieff and Spinoza allowed me to increase my intellectual powers. And that's what will happen to you. It's a very important what Gurdjieff brought out is the idea that we need to be involved in a group setting, whether it's someone, a leader of the group, or a teacher who has been through the process, because we have to learn how to see ourselves. There's an old saying, you cannot put new wine in old bottles, meaning that you cannot put new ideas in a bottle that's full, or your mind and body are full of information. What is that information? If you're, say, 20 years old, you have 20 years of old information, and some of that information is not correct. You might feel prejudice, you might feel anger quickly. You have expectations of how other people should be. Why? You might be a man of color or a woman of color. I am from a Hispanic background. My family was from Mexico. My parents were from Mexico. There's a lot of prejudice about Mexicans today. Our famous president, called President Trump, wants to build a big wall and keep any immigrants from Mexico coming in, or from other South American countries coming in. And today, many individuals are called the white groups, endeavor to admonish anyone who speaks Spanish or even foreign languages. Also, look at Muslims. Everybody has even Sikhs are thought of as being a Muslim because they wear a turban, or they have a beard, they have a colored skin, and there's a hatred towards Muslims also. This is all hearsay experience information, the lowest level of knowledge. When the individual begins to really apply reason and logic, and this is the part of Spinoza's language, reason, logic, and intuition, we begin to see the reality of human nature and eventually God's nature. So I want to end with that. Take a look at my website. You'll see it in the bottom. If you have a comment, please subscribe, and we're going to have more of these. Back to Eckhart Tolle. Eckhart Tolle started something wonderful, but yet it's very difficult to come to what Eckhart Tolle came to. I think that if you work with me, you'll find a way to understand Eckhart Tolle even better. Good night for now.